might take me a second to get this.
No problem. I forgot to ask, do you have sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, good. Sure. Ready? Okay, great. So up next we have Grayson Earle speaking about his project Bloc. Please welcome him.
Thanks. In a similar mode to Chelsea, I'll be talking a little bit about the inspiration behind the project before launching into a description of what it is. To do that, I should mention that I don't think that this project would have happened without Radical Networks. Actually, I attended it a couple of years ago, and it was pretty formative for thinking about a lot of these things. And so I really appreciate what the organizers of this conference do in producing culture for all of us to participate in and, potentiate new projects. So thanks a lot for that, definitely. Another project that I'd like to talk about to give some context to Bloc is SETI at Home. How many people have heard about this project? It's a kind of a favorite of mine. The idea is that so SETI being the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and before you think that I'm a total weirdo, this is sort of a legitimate organization founded by Carl Sagan and Frank Drake. Not that it needs to be legitimate to be cool, but basically the idea is they want to know if there are intelligent beings out in the universe trying to communicate with anyone out there that's willing to listen. And so they have this satellite array, and it's pointed into outer space, and it's kind of always, intaking data, and at times outputting data as well, and looking for patterns that might indicate intelligent life. So as you can imagine, this kind of thing is really difficult to fund. And in the late 90s, the Berkeley lab, SETI Berkeley lab, had a kind of a funding deficit. And so they came up with this interesting solution to the problem of not being able to afford a supercomputer, to sort of simplify things a bit, narratively anyway. And so they created this software that you could go and download, and then it would use your spare compute cycles on your home computer to take the raw data from the satellite array, crunch it into a usable format for researchers, and then put it back out. And in this way, they created this ad hoc supercomputer, and it worked. And tens of thousands of people participated in this project and made it a success. And then, of course, there's the idea of cryptocurrency, and I guess specifically Bitcoin, if you want to speak about this historically. I'm sure that everyone has a kind of a Bitcoin story, or many people do in here, about how they could have been rich. For me, it was when I was in grad school in 2009 or 10, and I was managing a media lab for 2 days a week as a way to kind of get tuition remission. And I was really interested in cryptocurrency, specifically for the technical aspects, like how you manage to, create a distributed financial system, or how you manage to manage that without a central authority and all that kind of thing. And so, of course, the mechanism that enables that is mining, right? So everyone kind of, or some people can opt into this, upgraded level of participation on the network, give some of their compute power over to verify transactions and that kind of a thing. And then as an incentive for that, you're given a small amount of the currency in return. And so I did this on the lab computers at my school for a couple of weeks, just 2 nights a week. And it wasn't really financially motivated. I think Bitcoin was worth like $10 or something, maybe a little bit more. For me, I was just sort of interested in it. And now, of course, I look back on that because I ran it for, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks and earned 2 Bitcoin. And now I'm like, okay, I could have, the Zapatistas would have so many more weapons if I would have kept doing that. But it sort of stuck in the back of my mind as this really interesting way to like generate wealth. And then, you know, of course, on the other hand, there's these kind of, for me at least, not so interesting political dimensions of cryptocurrency. Like the political discussions that tend to happen about the technology are really about things like emission rates and block sizes, and not about like how we might work to encode ethical standards into a financial system and distribute resources in that way. And then, obviously, the election of Donald Trump was, you know, something that gave a lot of people pause. And for me, it was like a moment to rethink how we were engaging with the internet, because obviously this like paradigm of sharing articles online wasn't really having any positive effect, wasn't really winning anything. And so I was curious about projects that might kind of work to have a material effect on the world. And of course, that reminded me of the SETI at Home project. And then also I should mention the white collar risk zones, which was put out by the Dark Inquiry, which is the kind of rhetorical software vertical of the New Inquiry, which is a radical online magazine. I ended up joining with them when they sort of agreed to be collaborators on the Bail Bloc project, but I find the white collar crime risk zones project really interesting. I wonder if it'll open up on the right screen. It's very low resolution, but I can at least walk you through what's happening here. So what you would see, maybe I can scroll down. Well, it kind of subverts the idea of these crime risk zone maps. So I'm not sure if it's the same in Europe, but in New York, it's a really popular kind of tool for the gentrifying class to have these websites that you can go on that'll say, okay, there have been this amount of crimes in this neighborhood, and so it'll have like a heat map, like stay away from there or something. And so the idea with this project that I was not involved in personally is that it subverts that, and it lays a map over New York City and the rest of the world about white collar crime risk, and then it gives an indication of what the person might look like that's committing those crimes. Oh gosh, present. Oh, that's not what I was doing. Sorry. There we go. And so that's kind of what the suspect might look like. But I found it really interesting because it's the idea of rhetorical software is kind of powerful, that software can be used to mount arguments in and of itself. And so I have to also bring up the subject of bail, of course. And I'm really not sure how it works on this side of the world, but in the United States, this is a really big deal and a hot topic at the moment. So bail is money or some form of property that is deposited to the court by the suspect in return for the release from pretrial detention. If the suspect does not return to court, the bail is forfeited, and the suspect may possibly be brought up on charges of the crime of failure to appear. In other words, if there's a charge against you for a crime while you're awaiting trial, if you have money, you can go home while you await trial and be with your family and be with your lawyer and strategize and all this stuff. If you don't have money, then you go to jail for the duration of the period from when you're arrested until your trial. This leads to insane injustices. So you have people like Khalif Browder, who's a young kid. He was not even 18. And it was alleged that he had stolen something. And so he was taken to Rikers Island and left there for 3 years awaiting trial before he eventually decided to take his own life as a way of escaping this terrible situation. And so we know that this has a disproportionate effect on low-income people and communities of color. In fact, I think you can, as my collaborator Maya Binyam says, you can think about the bail system as a currency mining project on communities of color. So some other aspects of bail is, okay, so we know that if you're rich, you can afford it, you can get out, and this allows you to strategize while you're outside of jail. It also means that you can probably afford a lawyer that's not a public defendant. And so if you are able to meet bail and you decide to take your case to trial, the chances in New York State that you're going to be given an innocent verdict are 50%. If you can't make bail and you await trial in pre-detention, the chances that you're going to get convicted or get released as innocent at the end of your trial are 8%. So there's a major, major, major disparity there. And even though this is the case, as a New York Times op-ed called, I think, The Bail Trap pointed out, there's still, it's still totally impacted, right? So judges in New York, specifically New York City, but all over the country, they're still hearing cases at midnight on Friday night, right? So there's already not enough judges, even though I sort of skipped a step. And so what a lot of people will do if they can't afford bail is they'll take what's called a plea bargain. So this is really important. So the DA, who's kind of in charge of assigning, crimes or charges for crimes in the United States, will say, okay, so I know you can't afford bail. How about we will lower your crime? So instead of having this conviction with this much time spent in jail, we'll give you this conviction with this much time spent in jail. And if you don't have the money to pay bail, then you're going to take that. And even still, with the majority of people who can't make bail taking these plea bargain deals, it's impacted, right? And so the idea for us was like, well, what if you could tip the scale? I mean, if even twice as many people could afford to pay bail in an area, then the justice system would it would collapse under its own weight, because there wouldn't be enough judges, there wouldn't be enough courtrooms, there wouldn't be enough jurors. And this really also points to the fact that the system is totally rigged, right? Because it's a basic assumption of the justice system that most people won't take their cases to trial, that poor people will just take plea bargains and rot in jail. So this is where the project, all of these factors kind of intersect, and the project Bail Bloc was born. So basically, Bail Bloc is like SETI at Home in the sense that it's a downloadable application. You go to our website, you click Join the Bloc, and then you can download this app, and it'll run in the background of your computer. In fact, well, the next slide will show it, but it's running right now. It'll run in the background of your computer, and it will mine a cryptocurrency. We're not using Bitcoin for reasons that I can get into if you're interested later. We're using a cryptocurrency known as Monero. And it takes about as many system resources as like a YouTube video. So you kind of leave this running in the background. It looks like that, just a little icon. And it mines cryptocurrency. So the more people that are using this, the more cryptocurrency is being mined. And then what we do is we take the crypto that has been mined every so often, and we exchange it for US dollars, and we give it to our partners at the Bronx Freedom Fund, and they get people out of jail with the money. And the average bail in New York City is something like between $600 and $900. Another reason why bail is an interesting target for this project is because bail funds are revolving. So if you pay bail for someone and they meet the conditions of that bail, which basically means they don't skip town, then the money is returned in full. And so if you raise $700 and the average bail is $600, theoretically you could get out like an infinite number of people. I think 96% of the time the conditions are met and the money is returned. So you can get out many, many people with just a low threshold of money. This is the stats graph of the project. This was taken in March or something. So it's kind of, people always ask, why is it that the amount of money raised today is less than yesterday? And this is, of course, because of the rampant speculation around cryptocurrencies. So the exchange rate of US dollars to Monero varies over time dramatically. But it's exactly this speculation that enables the project to begin with, right? All these people trading Monero back and forth, we're just sort of detorning that and putting it towards what we think is a more radical political task. This is a tweet from the Bronx Freedom Fund. After 5 weeks the project raised over $3,300 with something like, I think there were about 1,000 people using it by the end of that time period. And we gave it to them, and then they went in on, I think, like New Year's Day. They ended up going in and getting people out. And since then, the value of Monero has certainly gone down, as with the rest of the cryptosphere. But the project remains active, and while we're not raising as much money as we once were, we're still raising money. And the thing about Bail Bloc is that it's totally scalable, right? So if one person's using it, it's going to slowly gain money until someone can get released. And if 10,000 people are using it, then we're talking about making a huge difference and actually, getting into that area of like tipping the scale. And so that's the idea, and I hope that some people might join us. The M got pushed over because of the resolution, but you can figure that out. And I wanted to also make sure that I named all of the other people that contributed and collaborated on the project. So Maya Binyam, Francis Tseng, J.B. Rubinovitz, Sam Lavigne, Rachel Rosenfeld, Madeline Varner, Dhruv Mehrotra, and other members of the Dark Inquiry Collective. So thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have a statistic on the amount of people that are able to make bail, but then subsequently aren't able to afford a lawyer. How many innocent people get, or how many people get an innocent?
Right. So the question is, how many people can afford bail but can't afford a private attorney? And I don't know that information, but it would be valuable to know, like, yeah, because that would basically. Right. Totally. Like, what role does simply being able to strategize outside of institutional control, give you to prove your own innocence or something? Yeah, I don't know. I'll look into that, though. It's a great question.
I was also wondering if you happen to know if you're not able to make bail and you're in pretrial detention, does that mean you have to show up to your trial in a prison jumpsuit versus if you do make bail, you can show up in street clothes, or is it not?
I'm not sure. I think that definitely there are places where you do have to be wearing your prison uniform. It might vary state to state, but in a lot of the cases that I've been seeing photo documentation of in New York, they are showing up in uniform. And I'm sure that that has some kind of impact as well. Cool. Well, if anyone has any further questions, you can find me. I'll be around, so thank you.